maintenant, mais pourquoi pas.
Oui, mais sinon, on vous voyait pas.
Ok. Dear guests, dear members, dear partners, on behalf of the Franco-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, I would like to thank you for attending our today's conference dedicated to supporting Ukraine's future and the role of France's political, military, and economical strategy. Before we start, I would like to give a warm thank you and a warm welcome to all of you for participating to this event. We have over 250 participants, both here online in Kiev or present in Kiev and online as we are retransmitted. I will start by saying a few words about the French-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and our activities since the beginning of the war. We have the French Chamber of Commerce represents 150 French companies present in Ukraine and active in Ukraine. And we have been supporting the resilience and the continuity of the French business in Ukraine since the start of the war. We are organizing on a yearly basis over 50 events, which are either large conferences, networking programs, committees of our chambers of commerce dedicated to specific themes, as well as networking events. Also, we have been acting very much in the support and the resilience of the long-term reconstruction of Ukraine, and are trying to do so by providing as much information on the support, on the grants that are, and on the programs that are supported by the French state, and that are dedicated to the resilience and reconstruction of Ukraine. In order to do so, we are organizing a monthly newsletter, which is accessible on the internet side and can be distributed freely. We are organizing podcasts with interventions of the French companies where they present their activities and their role in Ukraine, and we are organizing webinars and learning expeditions. Webinars such as this one, and learning expeditions such as the one dedicated to the IT sector that will take place in May in Kiev. Now, coming back to today's topic, I would like to underline that France has stood by Ukraine from day one. We have done so politically, economically, and militarily, and we continue to do so. The topic of today's conference is really to understand what is the way forward, what is the way of the future, what are the programs that are being set by France, what is the position of France on these three main topics. In order to do so this morning, and with me, I have three esteemed guests. First, Gaël Veyssière, the Ambassador of France to Ukraine, which had to leave to go back to Paris to meet with the President Macron. So he has recorded his intervention, and we will be looking at it in a few minutes. And also with me today, I have Sébastien Surun, the Minister Counselor of France to the French Embassy in Ukraine, and Pierre Offret, which is the head of the economical mission of France in Ukraine. Both of them will be presenting us the views in relation to the strategical, military, economical, and political support of Ukraine, and will be answering also your questions. And if you are online, you have the possibility, of course, to act and to raise questions, which we will retransmit to the audience. So once again, thank you very much to all for your support to the French Chamber of Commerce. And without further ado, I suggest that we visualize the intervention of the Ambassador of France to Ukraine, Mr. Gaël Veyssière. Thank you.
Monsieur le Président, Madame la Secrétaire Générale, chers amis, je suis très heureux de pouvoir vous adresser ce message à l'occasion de cette importante conférence que vous organisez aujourd'hui sur le soutien à l'Ukraine. En réalité, j'avais prévu d'être avec vous ce matin et malheureusement, je ne le peux pas, mais c'est pour la bonne cause puisque je suis sur la route pour aller à Paris assister à un entretien entre le président Zelensky et le président Emmanuel Macron. Bon, je vous prie de m'en excuser, mais donc je ne peux pas être avec vous aujourd'hui. Mes collègues de l'ambassade sont là, Pierre et Sébastien, mon adjoint, qui pourront vous parler plus en détail, mais je voulais vous faire passer quelques messages simples. Le premier message, c'est la détermination de la France à continuer à soutenir l'Ukraine. Et en réalité, une détermination complète du président de la République, du gouvernement, un très large soutien au Parlement et une grande détermination de la population française elle-même. Il y a eu un sondage il y a à peu près 15 jours qui montre des niveaux très élevés de soutien à la cause ukrainienne de la part de la population française et qui montre aussi la volonté de poursuivre et d'augmenter l'aide militaire française à l'Ukraine. Il y a un socle très important de soutien et ce socle s'est en réalité renforcé depuis le 28 février et cette séquence terrible dans le bureau ovale qui a été une crise entre les États-Unis et l'Ukraine, crise qui maintenant est en partie dépassée par ce qui s'est passé à Jeddah. Donc le premier point, c'est ça, c'est que nous sommes vraiment déterminés à agir, à travailler et à avancer ensemble. C'est le sens de la visite du président Zelensky à Paris, c'est le sens de ce que le président de la République organise le lendemain, le 27, c'est-à-dire une réunion beaucoup plus large pour parler de la façon d'augmenter l'aide militaire à l'Ukraine, mais aussi pour travailler ensemble à des dispositifs de réassurance qui pourraient aller jusqu'à le déploiement de troupes sur le terrain dans le cadre d'un cessez-le-feu durable. C'est mon deuxième point, la France est mobilisée diplomatiquement pour créer ce cadre, faciliter un cadre qui puisse permettre une bonne solution pour l'Ukraine, une solution de sécurité dans un environnement qui a évidemment totalement changé avec la relation américaine qui se définit elle-même maintenant comme un espèce de médiateur et non plus comme un soutien à l'Ukraine, ce qui est un changement évidemment fondamental. Et nous sommes très engagés pour essayer de ramener les États-Unis dans le sens de quelque chose qui serait soutenable pour l'Ukraine. Et c'est le sens des efforts diplomatiques de la France, du ministre de l'Europe et des Affaires étrangères, mais bien sûr du président. C'est au fond ce qui va surtout être discuté aussi à Paris. Nous ne sommes pas seuls, nous sommes avec le Royaume-Uni, nous sommes aussi avec le futur chancelier allemand qui n'a pas encore pris ses fonctions de chancelier, M. Merz, mais qui est très engagé sur ce sujet, et avec beaucoup d'autres partenaires européens essentiellement, mais pas seulement, puisqu'il y a aussi des Canadiens par exemple, et d'autres pays, l'Australie et d'autres. Donc c'est le sens de cet effort. Le troisième axe, c'est évidemment, parce que ça c'est un peu l'actualité immédiate dont je viens de vous parler, le troisième axe c'est ce qui est plus structurant, ce qui est structurant c'est évidemment la candidature de l'Ukraine pour entrer dans l'Union européenne et le soutien que l'Union européenne lui apporte à cette fin. Là aussi nous sommes très mobilisés, très engagés, c'est une perspective très importante, l'Ukraine continue et doit continuer à mener à la fois les réformes et la guerre, c'est évidemment structurant, et nous travaillons très concrètement avec les autorités ukrainiennes pour qu'elles puissent le faire, y compris en déployant des experts qui viennent apporter leurs connaissances techniques de l'acquis communautaire, et aussi de la façon dont cet acquis est concrètement mis en œuvre. Il y a un travail énorme à faire, l'Ukraine le fait, et je crois qu'il faut lui rendre hommage. Ça pose une autre question, et certains d'entre vous avait posé à l'avance la question qui est de l'organisation de notre Union européenne et le fait que beaucoup de décisions sont prises à l'unanimité et que sans trahir de secret, un pays, un État membre en particulier, est particulièrement problématique sur ces questions d'élargissement comme sur les questions d'appui à l'Ukraine. Ce pays, c'est la Hongrie, bien entendu. Oui, il y a des solutions pour éviter ces situations. Vous avez peut-être vu que le Conseil européen a annoncé des choses qui étaient décidées à 26, donc ce n'est pas une décision du Conseil européen, c'est une décision de 26 États membres. Politiquement, c'est quand même évidemment très important. Et par ailleurs, il y a d'autres solutions techniques. C'est compliqué, c'est difficile. Jusqu'ici, on a toujours réussi à maintenir la Hongrie à bord sur les points essentiels, le maintien des sanctions par exemple, leur augmentation progressive dans le temps, ou le soutien à l'Ukraine. C'est vrai que c'est compliqué. L'Union européenne est complexe, mais ça fait partie aussi de sa force, parce que nous sommes unis, mais dans la diversité. Voilà. Donc il faut continuer à travailler dans cette perspective. On le fait étroitement avec les Ukrainiens, on continue aussi à travailler que sur d'autres sujets, bien sûr, l'OCDE, et puis la perspective un jour de rejoindre l'OTAN, même si naturellement, c'est pas pour tout de suite. Voilà, je vais m'arrêter là, pour pas être trop long. beaucoup de sujets à traiter, et une conviction qui est que la France va continuer à soutenir l'Ukraine, l'Europe va continuer à soutenir l'Ukraine, les partenaires au sens large vont continuer à soutenir l'Ukraine, et que c'est le moment de s'occuper de ce pays, c'est le moment d'investir pour ceux qui le peuvent, c'est le moment de développer les relations avec ce pays, c'est leur intérêt, c'est notre intérêt, et au fond, c'est aussi un investissement dans la sécurité et dans le bien-être de l'Europe. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Maybe one question to Sébastien Surun about the ambassador mentioned the fact that the assistance from the US to Ukraine has reduced. We all noticed it, and it is particularly on the economical side also as a large impact. Here, could you provide us with more insight, more information of how France has been stepping in or intends to step in order to fill in the gap, and how together and also how with Europe and the European programs, what are the concrete and objective programs that are being put in place in order to assist Ukraine on this difficult task?
Thank you. If I may, just a first few words to mostly our Ukrainian audience here. Перше, я хочу сказати, що ми тут, ми з вами, ми тут як партнери. And that is, I think, a good transition to how reliable a partner we are. I think what the US decided regarding US aid, to start with, was a bit of a wake-up call to all of us, and also showed the scope of US assistance in many fields. And these are things we try to list. These are things we try to have a better idea about, so that we know what we can place. And a discussion is happening right now with the Ukrainian authorities and civil society to see what are the priorities, where do we need to step in as European Union, as France, and other partners will follow suit. Regarding military and intelligence sharing, that was also a wake-up call, and that was also showing what the US was doing, and also asking ourselves, what do we need to replace? What can we replace? So maybe I'll start with military intelligence. It has been disconnected at some point. It has been reconnected afterwards. So there is no emergency in military terms, but there is politically an issue. What if that happens again? There have been clear statements of the French Minister of Defense, Sébastien, mentioning even before that crisis that we were sharing intelligence. We will not go into details, but the very fact that a French military authority and political authority is going public on that, I think, is a very strong sign of support. When it comes to military assistance, I would say that in a way it feels odd to have been right so long ago, or maybe too early. The very point of the French defense industry is to be as sovereign, as autonomous as possible, and to not be expecting or needing any support or any authorization from anyone. That is very much the way the Mirage jet fighters, for example, were built. They are what's called ITAR-free. ITAR is the US legislation regarding export, re-export, and end users of defense systems. We are out of the scope, and deliberately. It is sometimes a challenge for our industry, but it's very much the way we want to go. So when we are supporting a partner with military assistance, it comes with no strings attached with other actors in the military field. There are things that are more challenging to replace if the US decides not to pursue, again, military assistance. Again, it has restarted, so flows of what had been decided by the previous administration are still coming, and there is no shortage in the short term. But again, it's a wake-up call, so what is it we can replace? A lot. In terms of technology, a lot as well, not everything overnight. The issue is mostly with the industrial capacities. How quickly can we produce? How quickly can we buy stuff elsewhere on the market and bring it here. I would just end with the fact that there's no magical switch as in the movies where somewhere in Washington someone pushes a button and every US-made military equipment is grounded. But there is, in fact, maintenance for all of these equipments, and if you don't plug them in, like your car, it's a bit more challenging and complicated than a car, but if you don't plug them in regularly, and if you don't update, like your computer, to have the last version and the last operating systems, then at some point your equipment stops working. So that is where the control goes, and again, that is what we, as a French partner, would not do. When we supply defense systems, we supply them to partners that we trust.
Thank you. Maybe one question relating to the fact that France is a reliable partner. One question relating to politics and maybe inside of the government, has there been any changes in the vision towards Ukraine, the strategy to be adopted, and more generally, without going into politics, but do you see that there is a consensus throughout the political parties, or how do you see maybe the situation in a few words in France in relation to the position towards Ukraine?
So I would see three layers here. The first one is the government, and in the French system, foreign policy, security policy is very much in the hands of the president. The president was elected in 2017, re-elected in 2022. He's there until 2027, and he has very clear views, as you know, on why we support Ukraine and how we support Ukraine. The government is very much on the same line. Previous Prime Minister Gabriel Attal is now the head of the friendship group in Parliament, and he's been here, I think, twice in the last 6 months, and counting. So that is also more than symbolic sign of the interest for Ukraine and of the dedication of our politicians. So in the government, there is no issue there. Even when we start to have debates on how to fund this effort, what are the consequences, how do we switch to a more defense-oriented economy in some sectors, what are the consequences of that? This debate is happening, but the conclusion is we have to go forward. We have to go forward, and we are willing to go forward. In Parliament, there was a resolution passed, I think 2 weeks ago, in support of Ukraine. And the only debate was among political parties, the question of assets, frozen, seized, etc. I know it's a debate in many places, but that was the only main debate put up for vote. Then there is in Parliament a debate, like it should be. There are parties that have different views. Some of them are maybe easier to understand or less easy to understand from a Ukrainian perspective. But I was struck by a discussion I had maybe a month ago with the mayor of a big French city, Orléans, if you know the place. He has been elected a mayor for the last 20 years, so I trust that he knows his audience, he knows his population. And he told me that he has decided to put Ukrainian flags all over the place. And in the last 3 years, there was one person coming to him saying he didn't agree with that. Everyone else says, yes, we understand. We understand where it's a priority, we understand that it's symbolic, we understand that it's also practical. Some people in France say, well, let's be selfish, it's our security as well. I think it's also a good argument. Not just solidarity, but also our own security, our own shared European interests. So I think that is the stand of the debate. And what I take from that conversation with the mayor of Orléans is that there is probably a difference between the foam you see in TV debates, if you see it on Twitter, in a part of the political debate as well, and a more resilient, down-to-earth position of much of the French audience. And Ambassador Veyssière just mentioned that there are opinion polls proving that the French public knows where we stand, knows why we stand with Ukraine in this crisis.
Very clear. Thank you very much. Before we come back to certain political issues or questions, maybe we switch to economical strategy of France, and maybe a first question to Pierre Offret in relation to the 200 million fund, as it is called. It is an innovation because it is a fund an instrument that was not has been created specifically to assist Ukraine. In a few words, and I will leave the floor to you to present us into more details. In a few words, as we understand it, it has been it's a grant from France to Ukraine. 20 projects have been selected in various sectors. They have been meticulously chosen, and the French companies participating have been chosen in relation with the Ukrainian actors and based on the needs and the urgent needs of Ukraine in certain sectors. Maybe Pierre, you can give us more insight as to what the projects are, where do we stand, and how is it perceived, and what is the aim on the mid and long term? Is the aim to increase the fund and the value of the fund and to reproduce it? Is it to bring people to invest and come to Ukraine to invest more? Can you give us some more insight on that?
Of course, Bertrand, and thank you very much for this question. Indeed, this bilateral fund is one of the pillars of our economic diplomacy here in Ukraine. And the goals of this fund, in fact, there are three goals. The first one was to be able to answer to very urgent needs of Ukraine in a time of crisis, especially when it comes to energy, infrastructures, water, etc., etc. The second goal was to take into account, while answering to those needs, the financial constraints on Ukraine. Ukraine has been facing a huge increase in its financial needs, with a huge constraint on public finances and especially indebtedness. And so, in this respect, the best way to intervene here to support our partner was to intervene through grant. And indeed, as you said, it was an unprecedented tool. Ukraine is in fact the only country to have benefited from such an initiative, which shows, as Sébastien said, the very importance of Ukraine for our political authorities, especially in a time of also constraints on our own public finances. So we can imagine the importance of this gesture towards Ukraine in this overall situation also in France. And the third goal of this fund was also to give a small incentive to French companies to increase their activity in Ukraine. We have the chance to be able to rely currently on a very good and very solid base of French companies active in Ukraine, which you represent, Bertrand and colleagues here. But it was time also, 2 years after the start of the full-scale invasion, to show that business is possible in Ukraine, that there are opportunities here, and we wanted this fund to be an opportunity for companies already present, or companies that would like to start their operation in Ukraine, to do it, basically. And in this respect, it was a success because we had only 200 million euro. Only in our context, it's a lot. 200 million euro available, and we received for more than 700 million euro, more than 70 projects. Out of those projects, Ukrainian authorities decided to finance 19 of them. And so where we are now. So in fact, those projects are being launched currently. There had been a few weeks ago a very big event in Veyssière where we received the first Deputy Prime Minister of Economic, who announced with Eric Lombard those 19 projects, those 19 laureates. So 19 projects in 5 sectors: energy, water, demining, infrastructure, and health. So which shows that we were really targeting the most pressing needs of the country right now in this situation of war. Just like to give you some concrete examples of the project. I think it can be of interest for our audience. I'd like to talk about, for instance, one project of Schneider Electric in Kharkiv, whose main is just to refurbish and rehabilitate the heating system of the city. So you know, Kharkiv is a heroic city, one of the symbols of Ukrainian resistance, and thanks to the fund, Schneider Electric will be able to develop new heating facilities to restore the heating system of this heroic city just 70 kilometers from the front line. Another very interesting project for veterans, for instance. We have many projects in the health sector. We have one company, Resilience Orthopedics, who will provide to veterans and to soldiers that has been injured and also civilian injured during the war, new innovations to be able to receive, to be better treated and cared, especially in the phase of rehabilitation, post-operation, etc. So these are just two examples that show that we are really here at the very core of the needs of the population here. And so what do we, to enter into the cuisine interne, as we say, we're currently signing the contracts, etc. So normally the project will be operationalized in the very coming months. And what happens next? We hope that this project for those companies will be a way, sort of flagship projects that will enable them to develop new activities based on other funds. And we try to complement this fund with the opening of new tools here in Ukraine. So just last year, we have opened the office of the French Development Agency, which will provide to Ukraine new financing focused, for instance, on social housing, on public transportation, on water, also, etc. So this will completely complement our approach on the bilateral fund in a more long-term perspective. We may also, at some point, increase our financial interventions here in Ukraine, either through concessional loans or through guarantees that can be provided, for instance, by our Exim Bank, which is a way also to accompany French companies in their willingness to take more risk in Ukraine, because, of course, it's a particular situation, but at the same time, it's still possible here to take risk, and we have many of you are taking those risks on a daily basis, and so this is something that we want to increase in a long-term perspective thanks to those tools. And so it means that now we have all our available tools from a purely economic diplomatic perspective available in Ukraine with, so of course the embassy, with Business France, with the French Agency of Development, Expertise France also, BPI. We are ready to move forward.
Yeah. Thank you very much. For those of you who are not necessarily all aware, indeed, AFD opened an office quite recently in Ukraine. I guess we will have a webinar with there to better understand their actions in Ukraine, which we understand is more focused on financing municipalities and local communities on infrastructure projects. Expertise France, and I learned it today, meeting with them, as over 50% present in Ukraine, is managing a lot of projects. So we see a large presence, and it's increasing really rapidly, so that's very nice to see. For the companies that are interested in terms of investing, participating to the reconstruction, and because the private sector will be required, and everybody understands that the public funds will not be sufficient in order to proceed with the reconstruction. Maybe one question. There has been the BPI guarantee, so the guarantee of the French state bank on investments, if investments were made in Ukraine during the wartime. Can you tell us how many projects have been presented? We see that the number is not quite impressive as far as we might know. Why do you think, why is this, except as a difficulty, what could be changed, what could be in the approach modified? We hear that the message of the Ukrainian government is very clear, is invest now because tomorrow will be too late, so now is the day to invest. How can we vehiculate better maybe this message, or bring French companies to have less fear on investing into Ukraine in the present time? Maybe if you have an idea or insights on that.
So it's a tough question, and thank you, Bertrand. And no, indeed. So first, what we can say is that those tools normally they fit with the needs, which means that we have increased, for instance, the average level of coverage of the risk that can be covered through BPI from 95 through 97.5%. So it means that almost 100% of the risk can be covered by those tools. We have also contributed to other insurance schemes, especially through EBRD and others. So there is a high level and a high number of available insurance schemes currently for the Ukrainian market. But then, as you said, there is something that is still a bit difficult to overcome, which is a perception of risk, especially the perception of risk from France. And from France, when you are behind your TV, your screen, etc., when you look at the news, okay, you may have the impression that indeed Kiev is like London in 1940, that making business in Ukraine is just impossible, that it's a war zone everywhere, etc., etc. At the same time, we completely miss one of the reality of the situation. So yes, there is a war, yes, there is a risk, and yes, indeed, a tragedy is ongoing currently. But at the same time, what we see is that many other countries see, and many companies from other countries, they see opportunities as of now to increase their investments here in Ukraine. And when I say investment, just not just exports. I mean, really green fields in Ukraine with warehouses, infrastructures, facilities, and look at the news. Rheinmetall, for instance, new companies in the glass sector in Ukraine, which are ready to put a huge amount of money, especially from Germany, but not only, also from the northern and Baltic countries, from Turkey, here in Ukraine, despite the war, so to say. So this is the first thing. And the second thing is that we completely miss also the reality that in Ukraine there is a very high-skilled labor force, people that are super well-trained, very robust financial system, a country which is completely moving towards stronger governments, stronger transparency, etc., and which seriously takes the need to prepare itself for European integrations. And so what my message today is simple: just come and see. And every time we bring companies or that we bring people here, okay, they arrive, they don't know exactly what they are going to find. Because indeed, when you leave France to go to Ukraine, it can be a bit scary from the first perspective. But then when you are here, you see that, in fact, things are moving. The society, infrastructures are super resilient, and this is something that we see every day in the terms of growth. 3% this year, probably 3% of growth in a country at war after 3 years. It's just huge. So things are still working. People are there committing to committed to make things work. So come and see, and when you will leave, you will have only one willingness. It will be to come back and to bring new activities here in Ukraine. This is what we see every time. And for that, we have programs, we have partnerships, we have Business France. Once again, they are ready to organize business delegations here. We have you, Chamber of Commerce. You can rely also on our CCIFU, the external trade counselors that can provide you good advice to approach the Ukrainian market. You have MEDEF International, so many opportunities to come. So just come, see, and come back.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Maybe one last question, because you were saying other countries are maybe keen or keener to invest or are realizing other investments. One last program, and I know it's not necessarily within your field of activities, but there is a lot of talks about the European finance loans to Ukraine through the EU Commission of, I think it's about 5 billion euro. Is there any project that has been concretely announced? What are the fields of activities? We had a presentation with Gabriel Blanc on the program and how it works, or what was presented in terms of opportunities. Concretely, and just to give the companies that would be interested kind of an insight on where we stand. Can you tell us, is there any news or on what the programs are going to be and the investments going to be in a few days?
So we are currently reviewing with the European Commission the projects that have been received, and we are in talks with them, etc. We know that French companies have applied for this guarantee opportunities, which is a good thing. So it's a bit too early to say exactly what will come from this initiative. But in any case, it shows that the European Commission, and not only the European Commission, because I mean the Ukraine facility, it's also the member states, and a significant part of the Ukrainian facility is in fact French money through European channels, have seriously taken into consideration the need to incentivize companies to come and to take part into reconstruction, especially through IFIs and financing that can be brought by IFIs. But it's a bit too early to answer directly to say what will come from this initiative.
Thank you very much. Maybe I will raise one more question on the political side, and then we can have maybe questions from the audience posed to Pierre and Sébastien.
Could I just go a bit shortly on the economic side as well?
Sure.
One other point here is how much public support there is for supporting Ukraine, rebuilding Ukraine, and anchoring it to the European Union. That message is not only to our Ukrainian counterparts, it's also to the French business sector. And I think a part, as Pierre said, of the French business sector is still be skeptical. So we need to find the right points, the right arguments to convince them. There is indeed an issue of narrative. As you say, sometimes it seems that the whole country is at war. I'll just keep one figure. In the last year, Russian armed forces conquered 1% of Ukraine's territory at a cost of maybe 400,000 men. So it's a war going on, but it doesn't mean that the country is about to be overwhelmed, precisely because we're supporting, precisely because it is resilient, precisely because we're here together. There are also more economic cases to be made, and I would actually look at French possible investors. You may want to come here because your future competitors are here. Your competitors of today are investing here as well. The Nordics were mentioned, German companies, Baltic companies, Polish companies are here. So this is the right time to think about investing here, to build upon the existing workforce, to build upon a very mature economy. And I was in the supervisory board of a project we've co-financed with the EU, which is about innovation in the region. It was about tech. First big surprise, about 75% female attendant. That is not the usual tech meeting, and that says something about being more inclusive, and that means having bigger market. And the cycle from prototype to actual production is super short. I mean, that is coming as a shock to anyone who comes into tech, dev tech, education tech as well, and medical tech here, is how short decision cycles can be. That means there's something to be learned. So I will tell again French investors, you may learn a few things by coming to this market, things you don't know yet, you don't know how to do, but your competitors are learning them as well. So now is really the time.
Thank you for this message. One more on the military side or military strategy. We hear that NATO question might be out of the table. We hear that France is considering or maybe discussing the possibility to have a troops station in Ukraine at a point of time. Can you give us more insights on how this would be, what format would that take, and concretely what would be talking about as to the intervention?
Okay, so the first point is, it's not that maybe we're talking about, we are actually, literally as we speak, talking about it. And Ambassador Veyssière is not here precisely because he's meeting with President Macron and President Zelensky tomorrow in Paris, and the day after tomorrow there is a larger meeting of able and willing partners to discuss that aspect of the next steps. it's a bit unusual in terms of formats. You know, you have NATO, you have the EU, then you have the EU minus Hungary, you have NATO minus the US. I don't think it's very important, provided it works. And I make mine the definition of Europe that was made by the Norwegian Prime Minister when he intervened on 24th of February, marking the 3rd anniversary of the full-scale invasion. And he said, well, you know, Europe, that includes Norway, probably includes Canada as well. Canada is being courted by many people these days. But my point is, we are going with able and willing, and that is the one way forward that will work. There is also a difference between discussions about a peacekeeping force, monitoring a ceasefire or a truce. There could be technical options there. There could be maybe United Nations, maybe OSCE, maybe none of the above, maybe others. That would be along the front line. Another issue is security reassurances, which we want to provide on the Ukrainian side, and that is not on the front line, that is within Ukraine or next to Ukraine. There are many formats for that. What are the capacities we want to deploy? How many troops? We actually have like 4,000 French troops in Romania these days. We have, I think, about 500 in the Baltics as well, and so do many of our partners. So that mechanism is something we know already to some extent. The question is, what would be the mandate? And that is very much something we need to discuss with our Ukrainian partners. And then the question would be, how do we fulfill that mandate technically in terms of size of the force, and how we articulate the 3, 4, 5 nations that are already able to do something, and we are proud to be one of them. And what is the support we can have from other partners. So in short, that discussion has started. We have heard, like anyone, that Vladimir Putin is not happy with it. Well, we're not happy with having North Korean soldiers deployed on the Russian side of the front line. And by the way, that is violating UN Security Council sanctions that has been, among others, voted for by the Russian Federation. If the Ukrainian government asks their partners to come, join, be present, or have a role in this country's security, then it's the sovereign decision of the Ukrainian government, and that is something we are willing to take part in.
Thank you very much. Maybe some questions from the audience, or from, no, I see, yes, I see a few hands. So we're going to provide you with a microphone.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very interesting, actually. I have one question. It's you mentioned that we received several wake-up calls from the US during the past few weeks. Do you see something really moving in Europe? You mentioned several things, but and in particular regarding the defense industry challenge, which we need to scale up dramatically. Do you see some European move to have common program together instead of developing? You mentioned the sovereignty is very important to be independent, okay, but do we trust each other enough to imagine, to produce weapons together? Do you see something moving here? And also, sorry, just you mentioned also this tech mindset in Ukraine, where they develop a fantastic system of, especially for the drone industry. Do you see also some cooperation between Europe and this specific industry, which is extremely innovative?
Okay, so the short answer to your first question is yes, we see things moving. We've seen things moving even before the last few months. I would date that with the first big plans by then EU Commissioner Breton, who was in charge of industry matters. And at the beginning of the war, that is when we started to have the EU scratching their head and saying, well, what can we do? Then discovering that the EU is never as agile as when it's under pressure. And it is under pressure. It's a good thing that it's under pressure. So that is when things are happening. And if you look at a sequence of the last few weeks, there was a meeting in London asking questions then there was a meeting in Brussels, funding, and then there was a meeting in Paris with chief of staffs starting to answer the questions and having a look at the funding. So that is how things, step by step, are moving forward. I also see much of Europe's defense industry moving forward. That includes France's industry. I think more should be done, but if you look at how quickly industrial processes have been adapted, if you look at how quickly the production rates have been increased, if you look at how quickly some decisions have been made in terms also of cooperation within European, the defense industry of Europe, then yes, things are moving. Even here, where you have a French-German company who just opened shop, and I would like to see more of them, because again, they can learn something and they can have real partners. You mentioned drones. That is definitely a new dimension. I think it started with the Azerbaijan-Armenia war a few years ago, that bigger drones started to be used, but under our very eyes, the way warfare evolves has been extremely quick, and drones were definitely a big part of it, and the world's leading nation in drones and in drone warfare is Ukraine. It's right here. So, and there will be more of it elsewhere. So that is definitely one field where much can be learned from here and things are moving forward. Not quickly enough, partly because sometimes investment decisions are a bit too slow. I think the reason for that, again, we come back to government support, is that many of these companies were used to have one single client who was their national government. It's no longer the case. It's no longer the case for the French industry because we have always been a major defense systems exporter. But we still need to work on that and make sure that we have that selling argument as well for our companies. Last point on sovereignty versus cooperation. There is such a thing called European sovereignty, and we have partnerships. The next fighter jet in Europe will be a joint European project. In terms of Navy, everyone is working with their partners. In terms of armored vehicles, the big equipment, and what is not as visible, which is the rest, training, interoperability, all of that is something that within NATO we're so used to have that we're not aware of it anymore. Having 500 French military personnel working with 400 German and 500 British, it's something that we do all the time. It's a huge asset, and that is also something that enables us to think in terms of cooperation without thinking, what is your line of command? How do you guys work? How do you train? What do you mean by battalion? What do you mean by special forces? We know all that. All that is an asset, and that is also one of the bases of our defense within NATO. It's also one of the bases of our defense within the European Union.
Okay, I saw that you would have a question.
Hi, my name is Katerina Melichova. I'm representing here civil society of Ukraine. So actually I am from Impact Force NGO, and actually our work is to support vulnerable population of Ukraine, and for example, we believe that this economic support is the most important. We also do different upskilling, reskilling programs, and of course, we need more support in this regard. But for me, this support of people in Ukraine in terms of economical support is pretty much straightforward, and my thoughts today are also with those people who left on the occupied territories. So of course, like many Ukrainians have some families left there. So that's why my question is how we can support them, and maybe you have some thoughts and strategies to support those people who left on the occupied territories, and maybe you have some programs as well in this regard. And yeah, what is your strategy to reconnect with those people?
Okay, thank you. Sébastien or Pierre?
I could give it a try. It's a tricky question. Maybe tricky questions are best answered with basic principles. One of them being that the borders of Ukraine are the borders of 1991. So these are temporarily occupied territory. It would be up to the Ukrainian authorities to negotiate anything in terms of where a ceasefire line would be, whether there would be no ceasefire line. I mean, there are several options. It's not in our hands. We would support whatever the Ukrainian government says. This is what we're comfortable with, or this is a good scenario, or this is the least bad scenario. But as of today, these territories are occupied, and international law says what is occupation. It also says what you can't do. For example, you can't force populations you occupy into having your own citizenship. So that passportization process is illegal. It's not just illegal, it's actually not successful, because I think it has the deadline for everyone to get a Russian passport in the TOT has been moved 3 times. So obviously it's taking them a huge courage, but Ukrainian nationals living in the TOT want to remain Ukrainian nationals, and they're being pressured by all sorts of means. So our basic line is look at what international law says. This is Ukrainian territory, this is not Russian territory. Now there are practicalities to it as well, and of course it's challenging for us to directly intervene, directly act, directly support these populations. But I think the political aspect to it is what we can do best, to remind the world and to remind them that they're not forgotten, and we know where we stand. We invest a lot in infrastructure in all of these regions that have been affected by IDPs. So those who are no longer in the TOT but have moved sometimes several times, and who have moved between a few kilometers away from the front line and very far away. And some of the funding we provide goes into infrastructure, so that cities that had 100,000 inhabitants and then 50,000 and 120,000 can adapt and can deliver services to the population, because that is where the legitimacy of a democracy stands as well, making sure that people have something for their taxes. There is also a human rights aspect to it, which is partly dealt in international arenas, and that is where we want to be very, very vocal. Again, it's tricky. We do not want to do any harm or to expose people, but there is something that is very much in our mind in as many angles as we can.
Okay, well, I see maybe one question in the back. I see a lot of questions actually. So maybe be short. We'll try to be short also in the answers, because we want to pass as many questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Dmytro Fedeshko. I'm head of legal for Louis Dreyfus Company Ukraine, the company that has the first office in Odessa in 1864. So quite some experience here, and now being the #1 international grains exporter of Ukraine. So there is quite a chunk of experience here to discuss on the priorities that the French support has. So we do know from our cooperation with different international donors that absolutely appreciate the need of the emergency response, while balancing this with the development going forward. And what we see, the need to build up the capacity for the outreach for those who need the support, it takes the grants programs, it takes people, it takes the reporting and so on and so forth. It takes time to build this, and it takes also the operational expenses for this. At the same time, we see that the support or the investment into the infrastructure is maybe the easiest thing to pass on the whole support to all who need this. For example, the support for...
You have a question, sorry, because we're running out of time. So
yeah, so the question is what will be the balance of the emergency responses needs now and the future growth. Is it 50-50? Is it for time being like 90% now and everything we'll talk afterwards?
Thank you.
The infrastructure, do you see this as a part of these both parts or only one of these? And maybe that's the talk for the future. Thank you.
So I think there is one principle on which everybody agrees when it comes to Ukraine reconstruction, which is build back better. And this is exactly the type of logic that we try to follow, for instance, through the bilateral grant fund. So indeed, there is a short-term response, for instance, when you provide generators, stuff like that, to answer to urgent needs. But at the same time, if you go on the site of the Ministry of Economy to look into the project, you will see that many of them are focused on so rehabilitation, for instance, of water adduction infrastructure. So it means things that are not going to stay for 3 months, but for 30 years. Things related to renewable energies. And we know that the future energy mix of Ukraine will be composed of a much higher share of renewable energies. In parallel, as you said, we have not just focused, and we are not just focusing on short-term deliveries. For instance, last January, we have just delivered the first batch of rails for the complete rehabilitation of Ukrelisnitsia network and infrastructures. So with a view to EU accession of Ukraine and interconnection between Ukraine and its neighbors. So you see, we can play on the two sides, urgent needs, while thinking exactly at the same time in a more long-term perspective, because in fact, answering to the urgent needs of Ukraine is already contributing to reconstruction, and for that, if we want that to be efficient and not to be a waste of money and a waste of means also for Ukraine to go into things that we need to be refurbished just after the war to enter into a more long-term perspective, for instance, we need to take this long-term perspective into account as of now when we intervene in urgent cases.
Okay.
Can I just one sentence? Promise. Every year there is a joint appeal by UN agencies for emergency. This year's appeal is half of last year, because half of it is covered by local communities, local government, Ukraine government. So on the emergency, it is being covered more and more by local means, which is also why we switch to more long-term investment.
Okay, I suggest to take 1 or 2 questions online, and then we will be able also to discuss for the ones that are present. I see there are still many questions, but maybe we'll discuss it during our networking event after the presentation. Maybe 1 question online, because...
Okay, so the first question is what guarantees are there for investors right now, and what damage they already suffered?
So the guarantees that we have several types of tools currently available. So once again, if you go on the website of BPI France, you will see that we have several types of programs. We can cover several types of risk related to political and war risk insurances that we have. We can also cover through EBRD, for instance. We have contributed to the coverage of risk related to goods transportation through road and rivers, for instance. So these are just examples, but French Exim Bank and IFIs to which we contribute, EIB, EBRD, etc. They provide several types of guarantees, and they provide a very high level of coverage of the risk in any case. So then, saying what is the overall level of damage that our companies have experienced. In fact, it's a case-by-case approach. It's a bit complicated to answer to this question. What we see is that, once again, in many cases, infrastructures are not necessarily targeted in principle. It depends in which sector you intervene. If you want to intervene in IT infrastructure in Ukraine, the risk for your infrastructure to be destroyed is quite weak, so to say, at some point. On the contrary, for logistic warehouses, etc., which can have more strategic perspective, indeed the risk may be higher. And then indeed the tools that we bring can give a decisive push to trigger the investment decisions. But in any case, we believe that now, given the assessment of the risk, and BPI is taking the risk and is ready to take the risk, things are manageable in any case.
Yes, another question maybe?
Yes, there is another one question regarding the usage of US tools in electronic communication. Are there any European or French alternatives to avoid using the US ones?
If the elephant in the room is called Starlink, there is an alternative which is technologically a bit different. Well, there's one which is called OneWeb, which is also low-orbit satellites. There are fewer of them, and if you're into stargazing, you must know how many satellites there are from Starlink, because when trying to get a nice view, then there's one going through. But there is, more seriously, a low-orbit alternative, and there are higher orbit, more classic satellites. It means the signal is a tiny bit slower, but also better protected from everything that is flying around. And that is why a company like Eutelsat has been doing extremely well in the last few weeks in terms of offering solutions. It takes a bit of time because at some point you have to replace some of the terminals, the actual box, which is quite ubiquitous here, because you see everywhere these Starlink antennas, partly because they're subsidized, by the way. Part of the cost is borne by Starlink to make sure you buy it, like your phones, right? But there are solutions to some extent. Again, not everything can be replaced overnight, but we are working on offering alternatives. We are working on making sure that for every operation, you don't have to choose between one and nothing else, but you can actually see sometimes different solutions with their pros and cons. And that is, again, something that the Europeans have been quite good at, but usually not promoting themselves as well as others.
Thank you. No? Some...
So there are a few questions in the chat. Maybe I can read one of them. Are there any specific programs or initiatives that support such collaborations between France and Ukraine, especially in the technology and innovation sectors?
So yes, first we have one flagship project which has been a huge signal, and which is a huge signal not just for the tech community but in general for the business community, which is investment of Xavier Niel. We are just about a live sale, so it's a 1.5 billion euro investment. That's the biggest FDI in Ukraine for the last 10 years, and it happened last October. So it means a bit more than 2 years after the war. So we chose once again that doing business in Ukraine with Ukraine is possible. So this is a flagship project. And then, indeed, so we have a quite effective and dynamic French tech here that highly contribute to cross-links between the French and the Ukrainian community. We have also programs financed by Expertise France in connection to EU funds, the one that was evoked by Sébastien, EU for Innovation, for instance. So yes, we have program existing, and because we see that the tech sector here in Ukraine is very dynamic, it can be of huge interest for French companies, and I mean for the development of French companies, probably internationally. So not for the development of Ukrainian companies. That's the other idea.
Maybe one last question from online, and then we take a last question from the audience.
Okay, so the last question: what are French expectations of Donald Trump's peace initiatives and recent meetings between Americans and Russian and Ukrainians?
That's a very political question.
Why are you looking at me? Okay, let's put it this way. Donald Trump's initiatives have put a lot of pressure, energy in the system. Whether it's a good thing or bad thing, it can be debated. It's a fact that things are moving. So we want to make sure that things are moving the right way. they need to be inclusive in terms of talking about Ukraine's future with Ukraine, talking about European security with Europeans. But as someone said on 24th of February, the Europeans will not complain their way to the negotiating table. We need to have offers, to have solutions, and that's exactly what we're building in parallel. Donald Trump's initiatives also translate into energy, but we haven't yet seen more than that in terms of, is there a document, is there a process, is there anything tangible, which is normal at this stage of a discussion. Our job collectively is to make sure that we land with things that work, not just big ideas, but actual mechanisms that work and that ensure international law, that ensure security, that ensure Ukraine's and Europe's security. That's maybe a lot to ask, but that's what people like me are paid for, and that's definitely what we're working on. Any further detail, I suggest you direct the questions to the White House, because I wouldn't speak on their behalf, but I can speak on our behalf on what we expect from that process, what we want to bring in that process as well. I think it's just as important, not to say, well, it's not coming from us, we don't like it. It is existing, it is a fact, so let's make the best out of these facts and make sure that our interests are well served in there.
Thank you. Maybe there was a question from the back, if no?
My name is Yelizaveta. I'm here on the behalf of the SD platform, and I'm particularly from the women's lobby. And the question is about the gender lens to the economy. Do you think it's possible to apply gender lens to Ukrainian economy, and will it benefit Ukraine? Thank you.
So we all male here, by the way, and we're sorry for that. I know.
In fact, I think it's already happening, and to be honest, I mean, feminization of workforce, feminization of administrations in charge of economy, etc., is something already happening. And I'm always super surprised to see everywhere where I see to visit production sites, for instance, incubators in west of Ukraine, when I meet with ministries to tackle and to talk about investments, etc. I mean, women are holding this country at war, as is the case in many countries at war. It was also the same in France during the First World War, etc. So, and so in this respect, it is already happening, and so that's why, yes, we can do that, I believe. And on top, I would say, will it benefit to Ukraine? Of course, it already does, and this is what we see. Ukraine resilience and internal resilience, it's largely due and is largely thanks to women currently holding the country. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I will say a few words. I think it's a good transition with one of the largest event that is organized by the Chamber of Commerce. For 6 years now, we are organizing the Ukrainian Women Business Award. Every year, it will be, the ceremony will be in July. We have received over 200 applications, or 500 applications. I'm not good with figures. So 500 applications of extreme good quality. Last year, the laureates had a very innovative, very interesting projects. It is, and I can say, it is quite impressive, the quality of the files that we receive. So we're very happy to organize this. Also, today I want to thank our esteemed guests. I think it's been quite interesting to see as well the political and military side, even if it's not necessarily the common work of the chamber, but also the economical assistance of France to Ukraine. If you want more modalities or more technical knowledge, don't hesitate to visit our website. Don't hesitate to ask us for questions, for informations. I think we are here to really provide you as many information on the existing programs, on the grants, on the subsidies, on the guarantees that are given by France to the Ukrainian business. And we are all hoping and working in the resilience today and hopefully in the reconstruction tomorrow. And so thank you very much to all, and let's continue this event with a small networking event. Thank you very much to all.